Hey, this is Steve Good on the Coin Chat. Today joined by my co-host Yuri Cataldo and Morgan Pierce, the CMO from Seba Crypto, a bank down in Switzerland, although actually not in Switzerland. You are in Dublin, Ireland. So,
yes.
Morgan, welcome to the show. It's great to have you today.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
So, before we started the recording, we had an off-camera conversation, and you told us so many interesting things about you that will never condense into one episode. So where do we start in terms of telling us a little bit about you and how you ended up in crypto?
I'll try to give you the condensed versions. So I studied computer science and economics at university, and I started my first business when I was still at Columbia. I started another financial services business shortly after that. I spent a bunch of years in the sort of .com space working for Oracle. They relocated me here to Ireland. And then I got involved with a venture capital fund here in Ireland. And then I did the mom thing, and I stayed in tech until 2017 when, the little dabbling that I had done in Bitcoin in a few years earlier had kind of started to sort of bubble up. And I thought, this is going to be some really interesting technology. I had been watching this space for a while just because I was really interested in it, having studied economics. Actually, I wrote my thesis when I was in Columbia on the effective interest rate manipulation on the supply. So I was already in that sort of quantitative easing, angry, thing that we've all been living.
You joined crypto where it's all being manipulated anyway.
And so I was been in tech my whole career, and I had been watching. We talked a little bit about that game that I was telling you about called Second Life, and I read this article in 2006 that a guy had become a millionaire off of selling virtual properties online, and I just knew that that money was going to go digital. There's no way. Everything else in our life, music, books, everything's digital. Money, it makes perfect sense. It has to be digital. In my mind, it's the only way to eliminate some of the fraud, some of the crimes, some of the money laundering, all that stuff. It's the only way to make sure that everybody's taxed. So, in a fair way. And so it has to go digital. And made the decision in 2017 to leave the kind of SaaS, technology world where I had been living for the previous 6 or 7 years and retool myself. And I went to the University of Nicosia. Was the only university at the time that had a MOOC course on digital currencies. That's under
Cyprus, right?
Yeah, under Andreas Antonopoulos, who
interesting. So you've worked with him then?
Well, not worked with him. I was his student through his MOOC lectures, and got my digital certificate, and then started giving talks. I started giving talks around Ireland, around the UK, and then I got this big gig in LA where I spoke about crypto to 3,000 people, and that got picked up on YouTube. And about 5 months after that gig, but also while I was really active giving talks about, how crypto was going to revolutionize the world and blockchain and what the use cases were and all that stuff, then I got headhunted by Seba. The chief of staff contacted me on LinkedIn. Actually, it was St. Patrick's Day a year ago, so it's like literally coming up on a year. And I had a bunch of interviews on Skype, and I became very inspired by the CEO, Guido Bueller, and the team that he had assembled around himself. And they were like, would you be interested in being chief marketing officer for, a properly regulated, licensed, supervised cryptocurrency bank? And I believe in regulation because humans are always devious, even though we don't want them to be. But there's just this side of them that's not going to stop. And so regulation, in my mind,
break rules. Come on, Morgan. You know how it is.
Right. Yeah, but we find every time little way around things. And so I wasn't anti-regulation. I'm not a libertarian or anything like that. I obviously do want reform in a lot of ways, but I want reform in the right ways. And I jumped at the opportunity. I got on a plane, flew to Zurich, and got hired on the spot. And
amazing. That's fantastic.
Amazing 6 months. We raised a bunch of money, launched the brand, and now we're hopefully, I mean, you open the show, we're not a bank yet, So I've got to make that disclaimer, but we believe that we're very close to receiving our license, and we hope that, you know, we're going to be turning on the lights and firing up this bank built from the ground up with crypto at the core.
Okay.
And, you know, it's been very exciting.
Like, would be like Bitcoin savings.
So, you know, think of a bank account.
Private keys, or what would they be doing that makes it a bank? Just curious. I know we're diverging a little here, but I'm sort of interested because it's having a bank in crypto is sort of contradictory, since we're supposed to be our own bank.
So that's true, except for if you think about it, lending, for example, is one of the activities that banks perform. And, you know, I agree that there probably will be some peer-to-peer lending, but a lot of people aren't going to be in the peer-to-peer lending.
Right. Yeah, and so the only way to make crypto work is have a lending facility for mortgages and home loans and personal loans and whatever.
Yep. And the other thing is transaction banking, so being able to send money, you know, from one place to another, exchange fiat to crypto, crypto to fiat.
Yeah.
Storage.
Yuri and I have talked about in the past on previous episodes about how this is going to get solved. So that's really interesting that you've been behind this as sort of the marketing engine to figure out how to make this come to market. Really interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's the things that I learned along the way, which are, you know, now when I reflect on the year that I've had, have been really interesting. One of the things that wasn't sort of crystal clear to me, but now it's like clear as day, is that custody storage, which is the regulated storage of assets. And the reason I say assets is because right now custody in our fiat world, or in our sort of traditional financial world, applies primarily to securities. Mm-hmm. And so there's 4 banks that are the custodians of like 70% of the securities in the world: Citibank, State Street, BNY Mellon, and JP Morgan. And the securities market is worth like 115 trillion or something. I mean, I'm rounding numbers here and I'm pulling them off the top of my head, but it's rough, right? So the 4 banks store the physical stock certificates that represent all of the securities in the world. And what's really interesting about the crypto, or I'm going to say blockchain and digital asset world, is that the private keys in their most safe format have never touched the internet. They've been created offline.
Yeah.
And so custody storage is where you can provide the creation of privacy keys, of the private keys offline, and you can store them in a physical location in a very, very safe way. And we're talking equities, we're talking actual broad, narrow and broad money, but we're also talking real estate, valuable, I was using the term tokenization, and I heard yesterday somebody use the word fractionalization of assets, which is a much better term to use, because tokenization scares the pants off everybody, and fractionalization is very logical. Everybody gets it.
Listen, people are talking about fractionalizing how you have a VPN now. So you can have not one single socket connection to one place. You can have one connection to multi places to give you your internet, which is really mind-bending, because it just disrupts everything in terms of not having a central core that you connect to, being, you know, connecting through multiple anonymous sources to have internet access to everybody everywhere. I mean, it's just like, my God, this is like and then I've seen fractionalization of art, real estate. It's been a term that I've seen used for a while, but tokenization and fractionalization do have some differences in my opinion as well. But yes, totally get where you're going with this. It's shifting sand as well.
and exactly. Only because, you know, I mean, crypto tokens, everybody's like, oh, this is all this weird, kind of weird world. We were talking, Steve, before we got on the video here about this new movie coming out called Crypto, and in the trailer.
Let's see how bad we can make it look for everybody by telling a really bad story, right?
And the reality is this, I mean, what's happening is absolutely transformational for humanity.
Yeah.
And so back to the kind of like what I learned at the bank, custody, the safe storage of private keys, is much more important in the digital world than it is in the traditional financial markets, because everything is going to be digitized. And so the value of the custody market is going to be mind-blowingly larger than the customer
sure.
market that exists in the market.
How do you get a private key into a bank's vault then if they're being generated on your PC at home and you save them on a piece of paper?
So the bank generates its own keys.
Okay.
That's part of the custody service. Is that
I get it. Right. Cool.
Cold storage keys they're created in a deep cold storage facility, and they never ever the bank is storing the keys on behalf of the customer. Lots of people don't want to worry about their privacy.
The vast majority of people just want something simple, and crypto's too, as we say, squiggle bracket with all these numbers and letters, and people are like, oh my God, am I doing this correctly? Because it's a little scary when I have to send money to someone, well, not me personally, but for one who's never done this, to say, I'm sending this to a 0x what account? It's like, what am I doing? And for those who don't understand what 0x is, it's the preface for any Ethereum or Ethereum based coin. So, but that's always, a lot of people just go, oh, I don't know what I'm doing here. Are you sure I'm doing it correctly? And if I send it to the wrong place and blah, 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 and then how do I know I've received it or sent it, and where do I check? It's like either scan. We need to get to a point where we move from the beginnings of technology, like we did in the internet days, to something that's a little bit more usable. I mean, I remember like Gophers and FTP servers, and I was typing stuff in to like download files, and we moved on to something that was more graphical. And I feel like we've gone right back to that again,
And that's a really good analogy.
Huh?
I said that's a really good. I remember sending my very first email over CC mail in like 1990.
Oh my God! Yes.
And like waiting for the guy in Chicago that had and it was like you called your you literally had to pick up your handset and put it on the modem, and I mean it was like crazy stuff, right? And so you're exactly right. And within the digital asset world and in the regular world, ultra high net worth people, for example, they would never think of storing their own keys. They couldn't be bothered. They want a bank.
They'd be like, to store what?
They want a trusted partner to do all of that kind of thing for them. And for that reason, and for all the other reasons that you've read about, institutional money coming in and all the rest of it, a regulated entity that's overseen by a financial regulator that's making sure that all the things are being done right. I mean, it's absolutely a fundamental part of the plumbing that needs to happen in order for the digital asset market to reach its full potential. It never will.
To go mainstream, we need something, although it contradicts the underlying objective, I suppose, from the blockchain community about who owns what. But the reality is, if we want this to go mainstream, what you're saying is we need to move to a place where we start going back to trusting the banks again, even though the whole point was to try to create a more decentralized and trusted environment. Some of us are going to still end up going to banks for the same services because it's what we understand.
Yeah, and banking's been around for thousands of years. It hasn't always been what it is today, which is this, manipulation of the money supply and really taxation of the masses in a way that's totally unfair to them by devaluing their currency every day. I mean, I still believe in all of that, but I know that to get from A to B, or A to C, I should say, that we have to travel through B, and traveling through B means that institutions like SEBA come into the world that are regulated, that are overseen, so that the floodgates can open and the big money can come in, and things like the fractionalization of assets can continue to mature.
That's very true.
Yeah. Morgan, you've done a lot of different things in your career so far. How do you choose what the next project is that you want to work on?
That's actually a really good question, because I have spent most of my career, I mean, I worked for Oracle for a couple of years, but I have spent most of my career in the startup world. I started my first business right out of, in fact, I was still in school. And the way I started it is we got some programming work, me and this other guy, and then we got more programming work, and we got all of our friends programming, and we were writing applications in DBase in the late 80s. And it was the first part, it was the beginning of the networking wave where PCs could actually start to talk to each other. So we had mainframes, we had microcomputers, and now PCs were in the marketplace, and Ray Norda and Bill Gates had figured out how to get them to talk to each other, and all this stuff was happening, and we were creating these DBase applications. And before you know it, we had like 7 or 8 people and we were paying them out of our own bank account. And I was like, you know what, we're going to end up in jail. The IRS is going to put us in jail, and we have to form a company if we're going to keep doing this. And that's exactly what we did. We formed a company, and then we were open to the universe. Like, stuff just started to happen. We became the first Novell authorized certified network engineers in New York.
Oh my God! Back in the days of Novell networking, yeah, wow.
Yeah. And like, we did this stuff, and this company grew, and then we started. Then it became more about security, and we started working for bigger and bigger companies, and so it was just a really, really cool time. And then I started another company, and then I said, okay, I got to go get some big multinational experience if I'm gonna, grow up and be a powerful businesswoman, which is sort of was on the agenda. And so I went to work for an IBM Regional C reseller, and then I went to work for Oracle, and then I ended up right back in the startup world as a
Let's face it, the startup world's more fun, isn't it? Because we can influence and change and infuse ideas and make things happen a lot faster.
Yeah, I just the kind of person that I need a lot of stimulus to keep me excited about what I'm doing. And I can't be doing the same kind of thing every day. It just isn't that exciting to me. And I'm lucky enough to, I guess, be a risk lover, so much so that being on the cutting edge of startups is it's comfortable for me. It's not scary at all. And I've had some good things. I've had some companies not materialize. That's also happened. But I know that, the next evolution is right around the corner. So and in fact, with the bank, I'm going to be finishing up my startup launch phase, which was extraordinarily successful. We think we've had one of the most successful launch PR campaigns from like ground zero. Wow. Nobody had ever heard of us on the 25th of September, and on the 26th and 27th of September, something like, I can't remember the exact figure, but we generated like $17.9 million worth of publicity value in 24 hours.
Wow.
In the PR campaign that we ran for the launch of the bank, and it just kept growing after that. In the first,
you how powerful PR can be if it's done properly. That's for sure.
Yeah.
In the first 90 days, we touched 1.3 billion people with the PR campaign that we ran. I mean, it was wildly successful. And that's the kind of stuff that I absolutely really love. And then the sort of maintenance every day, PowerPoints for the CEO and things like that. I'm just not excited about that. So I gotta stay on that cutting edge. It's just part of who I am.
So what do you do next?
So off the back of this PR stuff, I'm pondering kind of, not a PR agency, because again, you sort of get in that sort of long-term, maintenance thing. But I think maybe like a company that launches, blockchain. So I've got the startup experience and I've got all the marketing experience. So I think it's going to be something around a company that launches. And I really want to stay in distributed ledger. I'm such a believer in where this world is going with this technology. And I used to give talks 20 years ago at Oracle, and I used to say, the problem with databases is that they can be erased. And until we have technology that is not manipulatable by a human being, we're sort of stuck in this loop of not being able to make some progress, and now we've got that. And so, I just feel like this is my time, and so I want to go out there and help a whole bunch of really young, excited people with brilliant ideas to get their ideas out into the world. And I think that's where my next focus will be.
So, go ahead.
You mentioned that you went to work for Oracle because you wanted to get that corporate experience to help you become a powerful businesswoman. Has your time at Oracle now helped you further along in your startups, or was it better beforehand when you were working at them without having that corporate experience?
That's a really good question, because I went to Oracle. I was head of business development for the internet sales division in 1998 in Europe, where, in Europe, the internet was, 1998 was like 1993 in the United States. And so I kind of found myself in startup mode, but in this multinational. And I went to my boss, amazing man by the name of Eric Dufault, who went on to become CSO for SAP worldwide, and just a truly inspirational guy. But he kind of gave me free rein, and I went to him and I said, you know what? I said, you want me to market over the internet across 44 countries. I have this idea for an online application that would allow me to create a campaign in English. We could create 14 copies of it in URLs, which now we call landing pages, but it's 1998. And I said, and we can do banner advertising, and we can use the URL to actually measure the number of people that come from banner advertising to our landing pages. And then we can get all of our telesales people to get a bunch of email addresses, and we can start an email database. And lo and behold, when I was at Oracle, I conceived of one of the very first marketing automation platforms on the planet, and my boss gave me the funding to go and start this, to have this piece of code developed so that we could run those campaigns, and we called it the electronic sales framework, and it ran for 4 years. It ran for 4 years, and it generated, in the first quarter, it generated, I think, something like $4 million worth of sales for the internet sales division in 1998, which it was actually huge at the time, how successful and how big it was. So even though I was in this giant company, I had this great boss who let me do what I wanted, and so I still found myself in that sort of startup.
Yeah. Wow.
It was cool. It was really cool.
I'm going to ask sort of last question of the episode here, because I mean, we're unfortunately don't have all. You're so interesting, because I think we could probably sit here for hours just asking you questions. I'm so fascinated by you. But I guess the thing, because you were talking about working with younger people. So if you were to say to women who are listening to this in particular that want to start a career in technology, or have started but maybe are facing challenges, and there's biases and there's challenges to make it, sometimes. What would you say to women that are listening or watching that say, I want to get into crypto, I want to get into blockchain, I want to get into technology. How do I get started? What should I be doing? Are there any tips or tricks you could give them?
So I would, of course, say go for it. I would say deep dive and study the technology, get to know what it is that this whole movement is about and how it's going to make a difference. I would say reach out to people like me women are, we're really good at supporting other women. The problem is women don't usually reach out. And so, I would love it if 100 women out there reached out to me and said, I have this idea, will you talk to me about it? Will you give me some advice about it? But women, we don't ask for help very often. So I would encourage people to seek out people, programs, mentors, things that can help you kind of start your journey. And I've been around a long time. I've been to a bunch of women's things where I hear about the glass ceiling and all this stuff, and I can tell you, I've never encountered it. If I wanted to get somewhere and I wanted to do something, I just did it. And for the most part, I was really well respected for it. And so if people start moaning about this, thing, and I know women are paid less, but you know what? We also take more time off. We get to have babies. Like, I just think it all comes out in the wash at the end of the day. And so I would say go for it. Put your heart into it. If you really want to make it happen, find the resources to make it work for you.
That is such great advice. I absolutely love it. I think it's a great way to conclude this episode too. I know we wanted to talk to you as well about your adventure and talking about curves and what you've been doing. So maybe we should just do a follow-up episode with you to talk to you about some of the other things you've been doing outside of the work you've been doing in the bank and the work you've done in Oracle, because there's so much more here. And if that's okay with you, we'd like to have you come back for a follow-up episode in a couple of months.
No problem.
And find out what have you gotten into next, and what mischief have you started, and what new problems have you created, and what new things have you solved? Because I have a feeling there's going to be something new to hear from you the next time we speak.
Yeah, definitely.
Fantastic. Well, on behalf of Yuri Cataldo and myself, Steve Good, thank you, Morgan, for joining us today on the Coin Chat, and thanks everybody today for listening in. For watching. Don't forget to give us a subscribe or a like, or of course, ring the little bell on YouTube. And thanks, everybody. To the moon. Until next time.